When my daughter-in-law told me she was moving out, I didn't argue. I just nodded, smiled faintly, and said, "Take care of yourself." Inside, my heart was trembling, but I didn't let it show. I've learned that sometimes silence hurts less than words. That evening, after she left, I sat at the kitchen table for hours. The house was quiet in a way it had never been before. The clock ticked, the tea grew cold, and the chair across from me, the one she used to sit in every morning, looked strangely empty, like it had forgotten its purpose. For 15 years, I thought she was angry with me. I thought she avoided me because she couldn't stand my presence, but I was wrong, terribly wrong. It's strange how the mind works when we don't know the truth. It fills the gaps with our own fears, our own guilt. I convinced myself that I had done something unforgivable, even though I couldn't remember what it was. I replayed every word, every glance, every silence between us, searching for where it all went wrong. If you asked me back then, I would have told you that she simply didn't like me, that she had never accepted me as part of her life. But the truth, as I later learned, was something entirely different, and far heavier than I could have imagined. When Daniel brought her home for the first time, I remember feeling both nervous and excited. Her name was Emma, soft-spoken, polite, with kind eyes that darted around the room as if searching for safety. I noticed the way she looked at my son, with quiet admiration, almost shyness. It warmed my heart. I wanted to believe she'd be the one to bring laughter back into our house. Daniel had lost his father young, and for years it had been just the two of us. I tried to be both mother and father, but there are limits to how much love can fill a silence. I was afraid of losing him, afraid that once he married, he'd drift away like so many sons do. When Emma and Daniel married, the house felt alive again. There were new scents, new sounds, her laughter echoing down the hallway, her soft humming in the kitchen. She was different from me. Where I was practical, she was gentle. Where I spoke directly, she hesitated, choosing her words carefully. At first, we got along well enough. She helped me in the kitchen, and I taught her a few old family recipes. She'd giggle when she burned the bread or forgot the salt. I remember thinking, she'll learn. She just needs time. But somewhere along the way, small cracks began to appear, the kind that don't make noise until they've already deepened. The early days of misunderstanding. It started with little things. A sigh when I offered advice. A quiet look when I moved something in her kitchen. A soft, polite "I'll handle it" when I tried to help. I mistook her quietness for distance, her politeness for coldness, and maybe she mistook my concern for control. When Daniel got busy with work and started coming home late, she'd sit by the window waiting for him. I'd tell her not to worry, that men have to work hard to build a life. She'd smile weakly and nod, but I could see something in her eyes, something fragile, uncertain. One evening, she said softly, "Sometimes I wish he'd just talk to me. Not about work. Just about us." I didn't know what to say. In my world, men didn't talk much. They showed love through effort, not words. So I said what I thought was wise: "Be patient, dear. These things settle with time." She smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes, and that night, she stayed longer by the window, even after the lights outside had gone out. Over the years, Daniel's career grew, and with it, his distance. He traveled often. When he was home, he was tired, distracted, always checking his phone. Emma tried to keep the home warm, dinners ready, curtains washed, candles lit. But her laughter faded slowly, replaced by a quiet routine. I remember once finding her in the backyard, sitting by herself on a rainy morning. "Come inside," I said, handing her a towel. She didn't move. She just looked at the rain and whispered, "It's peaceful out here." I joined her. For a while, we both sat there, listening to the drops hitting the leaves. She said, almost to herself, "Do you ever feel invisible, even in your own home?" I was caught off guard. I wanted to say yes, but pride stopped me. So instead, I said, "You're not invisible. You just need to speak louder sometimes." She smiled faintly and said, "Maybe." I thought the conversation ended there, but maybe it was the moment she began to drift away, quietly, like someone stepping back from a door without closing it. As time passed, Daniel and Emma moved to their own house, just across town. At first, she called me often, sent pictures, invited me for tea. But slowly, the calls grew fewer, the visits shorter. When I called, sometimes she didn't answer. When she did, her voice sounded distracted, polite, like a guest speaking to a stranger. I convinced myself that she resented me, That perhaps she found me old-fashioned, intrusive, unnecessary. So I began to step back too. I stopped offering advice, stopped visiting without invitation, stopped asking about things that once mattered to both of us. That's how it happens. Distance doesn't come with storms. It comes with quietness. With unspoken words and avoided glances. One evening, years later, Daniel told me they were moving to another city for his work. I nodded, smiled, and said I understood. Emma hugged me politely, not tightly. I told myself not to expect more. She said, "We'll visit soon." They didn't. The loneliness that follows habit. The house became quiet again, the kind of quiet that doesn't heal. I filled my days with small things. Gardening, reading, making tea for one. Sometimes I'd catch myself setting an extra cup on the table, out of habit, I suppose. Then I'd sigh and put it back. People say mothers-in-law and daughters-in-law never truly get along, but that was never my belief. I always thought of her as my own. That's why it hurt more, not because she left, but because I couldn't understand why. Every year, I sent her a birthday card. Sometimes she replied with a short message. Sometimes not at all. On holidays, I'd call. She'd say she was busy but promised to call back. Sometimes she did. Sometimes she didn't, and with each missed call, my mind built another wall. She doesn't care. She never did. She's moved on. 15 years passed like that, one quiet day after another, until the silence between us became heavier than any argument could have been. Then, one morning, 15 years after they moved away, I heard a car pull into my driveway. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, she was standing there. Emma, her hair had streaks of gray now. Her eyes, those same gentle eyes, looked tired but kind. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I just whispered, "You came." She smiled softly and said, "I should have come sooner." We sat in the same kitchen where we once shared tea years ago. The same chairs, the same curtains, but everything felt different, older, quieter, fragile. She held her cup with both hands, as if steadying herself. "I need to tell you something," she said, and that's where everything began to change. She said it so gently that I almost didn't hear it the first time. "I need to tell you something." For a moment, I just stared at her, wondering where to begin, what to ask. So many years had gone by. Too many words had been left unsaid, and now she was here, sitting across from me as if time had folded back on itself. I poured her tea. My hands trembled a little, though I tried to hide it. She noticed, of course. Emma always noticed small things. Her eyes softened. "You still make tea the same way," she said quietly. I smiled. "Some habits never change." She nodded, took a sip, and set the cup down. "That's true. Some don't." There was a pause, long, uneasy. The kind of pause that carries the weight of everything you've left unsaid. Then she whispered, "I owe you an apology." I blinked. Of all the things I thought I'd hear that day, that wasn't one of them. "An apology?" I repeated softly. She nodded, tears already gathering in her eyes. "For the years I stayed away. For the silence. For everything." I didn't know what to say. My instinct was to comfort her, to tell her it didn't matter anymore, that I understood. But I didn't understand. Not yet. And something in her voice told me I needed to listen before I tried to ease the pain. So I stayed quiet. She looked down at her hands, twisting the ring on her finger, the one Daniel had given her when they got married. "You must have thought I hated you," she said. I hesitated, then nodded slightly. "I did. For a long time, I thought you wanted nothing to do with me." She closed her eyes for a moment. A single tear rolled down her cheek. "I never hated you," she said. "Not even for a second. I just didn't know how to face you." Her words confused me. "Face me? Why?" She looked up then, and there was something in her eyes, grief, guilt, love, all tangled together. "Because I was ashamed," she whispered. I didn't understand. I wanted to reach across the table, hold her hand, and ask what she meant, but my body felt frozen. "Ashamed of what, dear?" I asked finally. She took a deep breath and began to speak, slowly, like someone peeling back years of silence, one fragile layer at a time. "Do you remember the time Daniel started traveling more for work?" she asked. "Yes," I said quietly. "It was around the 3rd year of your marriage." She nodded. "That's when everything began to change." Her voice broke slightly. "I used to wait for him every night. I'd cook dinner, light the candles, and sit by the window until midnight. I thought maybe I wasn't enough, not interesting enough, not strong enough, not right for him." I felt my chest tighten. "Oh, Emma, she shook her head gently, stopping me. I blamed myself. I thought if I tried harder, if I smiled more, if I did everything perfectly, he'd notice. But instead, he grew quieter. And I grew lonelier. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, the walls closer. Her words carried so much ache that I could almost feel the air thickening around us. She continued, then one night, I found messages on his phone. They weren't cruel or scandalous, just soft, emotional words exchanged with someone else. Someone from his office. I gasped quietly, my heart pounding. Oh, my dear, she smiled faintly, a broken, fragile smile. I didn't confront him. I couldn't. I didn't want to lose him. I thought maybe it was just a phase. I told myself he'd come back to me if I stayed patient. I reached for her hand, but she didn't notice. Her eyes were lost somewhere far away, in a place that hurt too much to revisit. But he didn't come back, she continued softly. Not really. He stayed, yes, but only in body. His mind was always somewhere else. And I began to disappear in my own home. Her voice trembled. I didn't tell you, because I didn't want you to think less of him. I didn't want to break your heart. You loved him so much. And I thought, if I spoke about it, it would destroy everything. Tears stung my eyes. I hadn't known. All those years I thought she was distant out of pride, she had actually been drowning in silence. She wiped her tears with trembling fingers. After a while, I stopped calling. Not because I was angry, but because I couldn't pretend anymore. Every time you asked how things were, I wanted to cry, but I forced a smile instead. I didn't want you to hear the cracks in my voice. I looked down, my own tears blurring the table between us. All those times I thought you didn't care, I whispered, you were just surviving. She nodded, yes, and I didn't want pity, I wanted strength. But I didn't have much left. Her confession unraveled the years of misunderstanding like thread coming loose from an old sweater. Every cold word, every unanswered call, every quiet visit, all of it suddenly made sense, she continued after a long silence. Then, after a few years, Daniel and I decided to move. He said it would be a fresh start. I believed him. I wanted to. But things only got worse. We became strangers sharing a house. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And one day, he left. No warning. Just a note. I felt my breath catch. He left you? She nodded. He said he needed space. Needed to find himself, and I let him go, because I didn't have the strength to fight anymore. I closed my eyes. My hands trembled against the table. The room felt colder. For years, I had blamed her, all while she carried this alone. She sighed softly. After he left, I told myself I'd call you. I even picked up the phone many times. But what could I say? That your son walked out? That I failed as a wife? That everything I promised to protect had fallen apart? Her tears flowed freely now, and I couldn't hold mine back either. You didn't fail, I whispered. You didn't. But she only smiled sadly. Maybe not. But it felt that way. So I stayed silent. 15 years of silence. For a while, neither of us spoke. The sound of the ticking clock filled the room again, the same steady rhythm that had once been my only companion. Then I asked softly, where is he now? She looked down. He passed away. 3 years ago. A car accident. My heart stopped. The cup in my hand trembled. I set it down carefully, afraid it would shatter. I didn't know. No one told me. No one called. I felt something inside me collapse quietly, not loudly like breaking glass, but softly, like the sound of something folding in on itself. All these years, I'd been angry at the wrong person. I'm so sorry, I whispered, my voice shaking. She nodded, tears falling silently. I know you loved him. I didn't want to bring back your pain. That's why I never came. I thought you'd hate me for losing him. I reached across the table then and took her hand firmly. Emma, you could never make me hate you. She looked at me with tired eyes, searching for something, maybe forgiveness, maybe peace. I didn't come here for forgiveness, she said softly. I came because I realized I've been hiding for too long. I thought facing you would reopen old wounds, but maybe it's the only way to let them heal. We sat there in silence for a while. The afternoon light slanted through the window, falling across the table like a soft blanket. Outside, a few leaves rustled in the wind. The world went on, quietly, while ours stood still. After some time, I asked, "What will you do now?" She shrugged faintly. "I don't know. I've been living alone for a few years. I volunteer at a local library. It keeps me busy." I smiled gently. "That sounds nice." She nodded. "It is. Peaceful, in a way." There was another long pause. She looked around the kitchen, the shelves, the teapot, the curtains. "It still feels like home here," she said softly. I wanted to say, "It always will be," but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I just reached out and touched her hand again, and for the first time in 15 years, we sat together, not as strangers, not as family divided by silence, but as two women who had both lost something, and somehow, survived. That day, as she left, she turned at the door and said, "I never stopped caring for you. I just didn't know how to show it anymore." I nodded, unable to speak. She smiled through her tears and whispered, "Thank you for listening." Then she walked away, the same quiet steps that had once left my house years ago, but this time, they didn't echo with distance, they echoed with something softer. Closure, maybe. Or peace. When the door closed, I sat for a long time in that same kitchen, the air still warm from our tea, the silence different now, not heavy, but calm. 15 years of misunderstanding had melted into one quiet afternoon. That night, after Emma left, I couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after a storm, not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of something that has finally been spoken aloud. I sat in bed, staring at the small lamp on my nightstand, thinking about everything she had said. Daniel, Emma, those 15 long years between us that were filled with misunderstandings, assumptions, and silence. I kept hearing her voice in my head, "I never hated you. I just didn't know how to face you." It broke something inside me, but in a strange way, it also mended something else. For so long, I had built my own version of the story. I told myself she didn't care. I told myself she had changed. I told myself she had shut me out. But the truth was, I had never really asked why. I had been afraid of the answer. In the morning, I walked through the house, touching old things I hadn't noticed in years. Daniel's photograph on the wall, him in his graduation gown, smiling that same crooked smile. The old apron Emma used to wear, still folded neatly in the kitchen drawer. Even the chipped teacup she loved, the one with tiny blue flowers near the handle. It's strange how objects can hold memories even when people let go of them. I sat down at the table again, the same table where we'd spoken the day before. Her chair still had the slightest warmth. Or maybe it was my imagination. I closed my eyes and let the memories come back, slowly, like old letters being opened one by one. The early days. Revisited when Daniel first married Emma, he was proud. He used to tell me how lucky he felt. "She understands me," he'd say, his face bright with young love, and I would smile, feeling a mother's quiet joy. But I remembered, now, the little moments that I had ignored, moments that made more sense after what Emma told me. The night Daniel came home late and went straight to his study. Emma had been sitting on the couch, waiting. She smiled when he entered, but he barely looked at her. I thought it was just work stress. She looked at me then, and I remember her eyes, tired, pleading for something I didn't understand at the time. Another memory came, the time she made his favorite meal, and he didn't even notice. He ate quickly, then took a call. She smiled faintly and said, "He's busy," but I could hear her heart breaking beneath the calm words. Back then, I thought she was being dramatic, sensitive. Now, I realized she had been lonely, achingly, silently lonely, in the same house where love was supposed to live. Letters I never sent. After Daniel and Emma moved away, I used to write letters to her. Not many people knew that. I wrote them at night, when the loneliness felt too heavy. But I never sent them. I found those letters again that morning, tucked inside an old book. The ink had faded, but the words were still there, raw and uncertain. One letter said, "Emma, I don't know what I did wrong. I wish you'd call more often. I miss hearing your voice in this house." Another one said, "I hope Daniel is treating you well. He works too hard, but he means well. Don't be too upset if he forgets small things, that's just how men are." Reading those words now, I felt a sting in my chest. I had written them in love, but also in blindness. I hadn't known that she was the one hurting in silence, that Daniel was slowly slipping away from her. It's painful to realize how much of life we spend not really seeing each other. A visit to his grave a week after Emma's visit. I went to see Daniel's grave for the first time. It was in a small cemetery on the outskirts of the city, peaceful, surrounded by old trees. The caretaker led me there. Quietly, I stood there for a long time, just looking at his name carved into the stone. I didn't cry at first. I just felt numb, like my body didn't quite belong to me. I whispered, "You didn't tell me, Daniel. You didn't tell me what you were going through." What she was going through. The wind rustled the leaves, almost like an answer. I knelt down and placed a small white flower on the grave. My fingers trembled as I traced his name. I wanted to be angry, at him, at fate, at the years lost, but anger felt too small compared to everything else. Instead, I whispered, "I forgive you. Both of you." And with that, the tears came, slow, steady, quiet, tears not of bitterness, but of release. I realized something then. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it just means understanding. It means letting the weight fall from your shoulders, even if the people who hurt you are gone. Emma's second visit a month later, Emma visited again. This time, she brought flowers. We sat in the living room, sunlight pouring in through the window. She looked lighter somehow, as if she had left some of her pain behind the last time we spoke. "I went to see him," she said softly. I nodded. "So did I." She smiled gently. "He'd be happy we're talking again." I wanted to believe that, but maybe this wasn't about him anymore. Maybe it was about us, the two of us finally finding peace in a story that had gone wrong in so many quiet ways. She brought out a small box and placed it on the table. "These were his," she said. Inside were a few old photographs, Daniel as a young man, Daniel and Emma on their wedding day, Daniel holding our hands at a family picnic, and then, folded neatly beneath them, a letter. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakably his. It was addressed to both of us. "If you're reading this, I hope you've forgiven me. I wasn't the man I should have been. I hurt you both, in different ways, because I didn't know how to be honest about my own pain. I carried guilt, and I ran from it instead of fixing it. I hope you'll both find peace, even if it's without me." I stopped reading there. My voice broke. Emma took my hand and squeezed it. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The room was filled with sunlight and quiet breathing, and for the first time in years, I felt something gentle spreading through me, not joy exactly, but acceptance. The memory of rain that evening, after Emma left. It began to rain, soft, steady rain, the kind that feels like a blessing more than a storm. I stood by the window, just as Emma once had years ago, and watched the raindrops slide down the glass. In that moment, I remembered something she said to me long ago. "Do you ever feel invisible, even in your own home?" Back then, I hadn't understood her, but now, standing there alone, I did. So many of us carry invisible pain. We smile, we nod, we go on. We pretend to be fine because it's easier than explaining the ache, and maybe that's why so many misunderstandings happen, not because we stop caring, but because we stop showing that we care. If I had listened more. If she had spoken sooner. If Daniel had been honest about his struggles, maybe things would have been different. But life doesn't offer rewinds, only reflections. A quiet realization as I watched the rain. I whispered to myself, 15 years, and I thought she was angry. But all she wanted was understanding. That sentence lingered in the air, soft and true. The truth is, we rarely see the full story of someone's heart. We only see fragments, the parts they allow us to see. We fill the rest with assumptions, and in doing so, we build walls instead of bridges. Emma's silence wasn't rejection. It was protection. My distance wasn't cruelty. It was fear. Daniel's mistakes weren't hatred. They were weakness. We had all loved each other in imperfect ways that didn't always look like love, but were still love nonetheless. That night, I took out a new piece of paper and wrote one last letter, not to send, but to keep. It was for Emma this time. Dear Emma, I finally understand. The years that felt empty were not wasted, they were lessons we both needed. I wish I could erase your pain, but maybe pain was what led us here, to truth, to forgiveness, to quiet peace. You were never just my daughter-in-law. You were the daughter I didn't know how to love properly. I hope you know that now. With love, Mother. I folded the letter and placed it in my drawer beside the old ones, not to be sent, but to be remembered, a testament that love can survive silence if we let understanding take its place. As I turned off the light and lay down that night, I didn't feel alone. The house still creaked in the same old places, the clock still ticked, the rain still whispered outside, but it all felt softer, kinder. I realized something simple yet profound. Sometimes closure doesn't come with an embrace or a final goodbye. Sometimes it comes quietly, in a conversation over tea, in the sound of rain, in the peace that follows truth, and that peace, gentle, fragile, but real, is enough. Time, I've learned, doesn't always heal everything, but it teaches you how to live with the things that don't heal. Weeks turned into months after Emma's second visit. The air between us had changed, lighter, clearer, but still delicate, like sunlight after rain. We didn't talk often. There were no dramatic reconciliations, no tearful apologies. Just small gestures that slowly stitched together the years that silence had torn apart. One morning, she called. Her voice was calm, polite, the way two people speak when they're trying to build something fragile again. I was thinking of stopping by next week, she said. I'll bring that rose plant I promised. I smiled. You remember. She laughed softly. I never forget things like that. And for the first time, I realized we were learning to speak again, not as in-law and in-law, not as strangers who shared grief, but as two women who had both loved the same man and lost him in different ways. The garden. When she arrived that following week, she brought the rose plant wrapped in brown paper. It's a hardy one, she said, setting it down near the old fence. Even if you forget to water it, it still finds a way to bloom. Her words stayed with me. We planted it together in the garden, our hands brushing occasionally, our silence comfortable. I noticed how much older we both looked, not just in years, but in spirit. Yet, there was beauty in that aging too, like weathered pages of a book that had been read and reread, still holding meaning. After we finished, we sat on the bench beneath the old mango tree. The breeze carried the scent of earth and new leaves. Emma looked toward the sky, her expression unreadable. I used to think forgiveness meant forgetting, she said. But I don't think that anymore. I turned to her. What does it mean now? She paused. It means remembering without bitterness. Those words sank deep into me, not like a revelation, but like something my heart had always known but never spoken. Letters in the drawer. After Emma left, I found myself going through old boxes again. Not the painful ones this time, the ones filled with life. I found Daniel's childhood drawings, birthday cards, a few letters he had written from college. One said, Mom, stop worrying about me so much. I'm fine, I promise. Emma says hi. The handwriting was messy, rushed. I ran my fingers over it and smiled. Then I opened the drawer where I had placed the last letter I wrote to Emma. I didn't plan to give it to her. It wasn't necessary anymore. But sometimes I read it, just to remind myself that words, even the ones unsent, can heal quietly. The visit from the past. One afternoon, I received a call from Emma again. I'm visiting the town library tomorrow, she said. They're displaying old photographs of the community. There's one of you and Daniel there. I hadn't known about the exhibition. But something in her tone made me agree to go. The next day, I stood in front of the framed photograph. It was from a charity event years ago. Daniel standing between us, one arm around me, one around Emma. We were smiling. Genuinely smiling. For a moment, it felt like stepping back into that day. I could almost hear his laughter echoing through the hall. Emma stood beside me quietly. I almost forgot this day, she whispered. So did I. We didn't cry. We didn't need to. The silence was enough, filled not with regret this time, but gratitude. Gratitude that we had at least had those moments before everything changed. The small rituals as months passed, a quiet rhythm returned to my life. Every Sunday morning, I would water the rose plant Emma brought. Its first bloom appeared one early spring morning, a soft, pale pink flower swaying in the breeze. I sent her a picture. She replied, "See? I told you it would bloom." And that became our unspoken ritual, little messages, small check-ins, moments that said I remember you without needing to say I miss you. She even started sending me recipes again, ones Daniel used to love. Sometimes I cooked them and imagined him walking through the door, teasing me for using too much salt or too little spice. The grief was still there, but it had softened. It no longer screamed, it whispered. Emma's new life. One day, she told me she was moving to a smaller town, closer to her work. "It's time," she said. "I need a change." I understood. Sometimes peace means leaving the places that echo too loudly. Before she left, she visited me one last time. We sat in the same living room where our silence had once lived like a wall between us. Now, it felt different, warmer, lighter, almost like home again. She looked around and smiled faintly. "You've kept everything the same." I nodded. "It's how I remember him." "Maybe that's your way of loving him," she said softly. "Keeping the place as it was." "And yours?" I asked. She smiled sadly. "Learning to live again." There was nothing left to say after that. She hugged me, hesitant at first, then tighter, longer, and in that embrace, I felt everything, the pain, the forgiveness, the years between us, and the quiet love that still existed despite it all. When she left that day, I stood at the door until she turned the corner. I didn't cry. Instead, I whispered, "Be happy, my daughter." It was the first time I had ever called her that, even if she didn't hear it. The seasons turned. Years passed. The rose bush grew tall and wild, its roots deep and strong. Every spring it bloomed, without fail, as if to remind me that some things endure even when we don't nurture them perfectly. Emma wrote every now and then, short letters, photos of her travels, little updates about her new home. Her handwriting had softened, just like her tone. I replied sometimes. Other times, I didn't. There was comfort even in the silence now, the kind of silence that rests, not the kind that wounds. The final letter. One day, I received a small envelope, her name on it, familiar and steady. Inside was a single page. "Dear Mother, I don't know if I've ever said this clearly enough. Thank you for listening that day. It changed everything for me. It helped me forgive him and myself. I'm learning to find joy again, even in small things. The garden here is full of roses now. Every time they bloom, I think of you. With love, Emma." I sat there for a long time holding that letter, the paper trembling slightly in my hands. Then I looked out the window. The roses outside my own house were blooming. 2.2 gardens, miles apart, connected by something deeper than forgiveness, by quiet understanding. The reflection now, when I look back, I realize how strange and beautiful it is, the way people can break each other and still end up teaching one another how to heal. Emma and I never became what we once were, but we became something else, something softer, quieter, truer. The love between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law isn't always loud or easy. Sometimes it's buried under pride, misunderstanding, or unspoken pain. But when the noise fades, what remains, if we let it, is empathy. And empathy, I think, is another word for love that has learned patience. The rose and the rain. Last week, it rained again, the same kind of soft, forgiving rain that once fell the day after Emma's confession years ago. I went outside and stood near the roses, letting the droplets touch my face. The petals glistened, each drop catching the light. I thought of Daniel. I thought of Emma, and I thought of all the words we never said, all the moments we misunderstood, and how, somehow, we still found peace in the end. Maybe that's what life really is, not perfect understanding, but the effort to understand. I whispered quietly into the rain, "Thank you for everything." And as the wind carried my voice away, I felt light, lighter than I had in years, because sometimes, forgiveness isn't loud, it doesn't arrive with a hug or a promise, it comes gently, like rain after a long drought, steady, silent, and enough. It has been many years now, the house has grown older. Just like me, the walls carry whispers of laughter and tears, of lives that have come and gone, but every morning, when sunlight filters through the curtains and touches the rose plant by the window, I am reminded that some things never truly leave us. The rose bush outside still blooms every spring each time a new flower opens. I think of Emma, sometimes I imagine her in her new home, watering her own roses, smiling at the same sky. We do not talk much anymore, not because there is distance, but because there is peace, and peace, I've learned, is a quiet kind of closeness, reflections on what was and what remains. When I think back on those 15 years of silence, I no longer feel the sting of anger or regret, I only feel wonder at how easily love can hide beneath misunderstanding, and how long it takes us to see the truth. For so long, I thought Emma's distance was rejection. I thought she blamed me for what happened, or that she simply stopped caring, but the truth was simpler and sadder. She was hurting in her own way, quietly, bravely, silently, and while I waited for her to come back, she was waiting for me to reach out. Two hearts, standing in different corners of the same grief, both waiting for the other to take the first step. Isn't that how we all are sometimes? We hold our pain like a secret, afraid to speak it, afraid it will sound like weakness, but in the silence, love doesn't die, it just waits. What forgiveness feels like. Forgiveness, I have learned, is not a moment, it's a slow unfolding, like dawn creeping over a dark sky. One day you wake up, and the anger doesn't feel so sharp anymore. One day you find you can smile when you hear their name, and one day, without realizing it, you remember them with warmth instead of ache. That is forgiveness. It doesn't erase the past, but it softens it. It doesn't mean forgetting, it means understanding, and once you understand, peace follows quietly, like a guest who doesn't knock but gently opens the door and sits beside you. The letter I never sent. Sometimes, at night, I still write letters to Emma. I never send them. They're just words that fill the silence, thoughts that belong only to the two of us. Last night I wrote, "Dear Emma, if love had a sound, it would be silence, the kind that doesn't hurt anymore. Thank you for teaching me that even broken bonds can shine in their own way." I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer with the others. Maybe someday, when I am gone, someone will find them and understand that love never really ends, it just changes shape. If I could tell anyone one thing, it would be this: never assume silence means anger. Sometimes, silence means pain too heavy to carry out loud, and sometimes, it means love that doesn't know how to speak. Reach out, even if it feels late, because love has no sense of time, it waits, it forgives, it returns in ways we never expect. The sun is setting now, the light outside has turned golden, soft, like the last page of a long book. I sit by the window, a cup of tea in my hand, watching the petals of the roses move gently in the evening breeze. A quiet peace fills the air. The same peace that once felt impossible. I whisper to no one in particular, maybe to Daniel, maybe to Emma, maybe just to the world. I'm grateful for all of it. Even the silence. The breeze carries the scent of roses through the open window, and I close my eyes, letting the moment linger, because in the end, life isn't about the words we said or the things we lost, it's about the love that stayed, quietly, faithfully, and forever. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion, sometimes, it's simply peace.